So hello friends, welcome to my new video. So today we will be discussing about the von Gierke disease, the mnemonics and the points to remember about this disease. So I have designed a mnemonics to remember about the von Gierke disease. I hope it helps. So the mnemonics looks like all-time greatest Mr. Eddie Hall. I hope so you all know about Mr. Eddie Hall. He is the world champion in powerlifting and world strongman classic division. So all times A stands for autosomal recessive disease, times T stands for type 1A glycogen storage disease, greatest G stands for glucose 6 phosphatase deficiency, means glucose 6 phosphatase is deficient in this disease. M stands for megali, megali means inflammation, and in this megali inflammation class there is inflammation of liver and kidney, means hepatomegaly and renomegaly. So R stands for renomegaly over here, and AD is E stands for elevation, means elevation in uric acid, blood lactate and triglycerides, and the last H stands for hypoglycemia, the last. So have a note of it. Let's look at these points one by one in detail. But before starting, let's look at some mutations which are very important before starting the topic. So mutation in G6PC gene causes glycogen storage disease type 1A, and von Gierke disease is under GSD type 1A. So the second mutation in T1 translocase causes GSD type 2 1B diseases, and glycogen storage diseases type 1A and 1B are the most common. Third one, T2 translocase mutations causes GSD type 1C, means glycogen storage disease type 1C. And finally the T3 translocase mutations causes glycogen storage diseases type 1D. Among these four types of glycogen storage diseases, type 1A and type 1B are the most common ones, and von Gierke disease is under the glycogen storage disease type 1A. So I hope it is clear now. And one important point I have mentioned over here, that glucose 6 phosphatase is localized on the luminal side of the endoplasmic reticulum. Please remember this point. And now we are going to start our discussion. So let's start. Let's start our discussion on von Gierke disease. So as we looked at the mnemonic ATG, Mr. Eddie Hall, means all-time greatest Mr. Eddie Hall. So now let's decode each and every point and study them in detail. So it is an autosomal recessive disease, and it is the type of glycogen storage disease type 1A actually, isn't it? We already looked at that point too in the mutation section, that mutation in the G6PC gene causes glycogen storage diseases type 1A, and von Gierke disease is one of them. So glucose 6 phosphatase is the deficient enzyme in this disease. We already know that. We already looked at that point too. So glucose 6 phosphatase hydrolyzes glucose 6 phosphate, resulting in the creation of a phosphate group and a free glucose molecule in both gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis. So in these both processes, glucose 6 phosphatase enzyme is required, isn't it? You already know that. I know you all are very smart, isn't it? So let's continue. And if there is no glucose 6 phosphatase enzyme present, then phosphate will remain attached to glucose, impairing both gluconeogenesis as well as glycogenolysis. Means in these two processes, if glucose 6 phosphatase enzyme is absent, the whole of the processes will be ruined, isn't it? So I hope it is clear. I am repeating it for once again, that due to lack of glucose 6 phosphatase, both of these processes, gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis, are interrupted, means impaired actually, because that phosphate will remain attached to that glucose. So let's look at the other points too. The fourth point, that is megali, means hepatomegaly and renomegaly. So glycogen accumulation leads to increased glycogen in the liver and kidneys. So if glycogen is in excess in liver and kidneys, it results in inflammation of them, isn't it? So excess glycogen accumulation leads to hepatomegaly and renomegaly, means patients may present with a bulging abdomen, isn't it? Then E for elevations, and there are 3 elevations. Have a look: elevated uric acid, elevated blood lactate, as well as elevated triglycerides. So let's decode them one by one. In elevated uric acid, it can cause gout. So lactic acid competes with the uric acid for transport in the renal tubules. Thus uric acid also builds up in the body. You already know that. Next, elevated blood lactate. Impairment of gluconeogenesis leads to accumulation of pyruvate, and thus impairing the conversion of lactate into pyruvate or the pyruvic acid. As we know that due to lack of the glucose 6 phosphatase, the impairment in this process of gluconeogenesis and glycogenolysis occurs. And due to impairment of gluconeogenesis, it leads to the accumulation of pyruvate, thus impairing the conversion of lactate into pyruvic acid or pyruvate. And the third elevation, that is elevated triglycerides. Low levels of glucose causes low levels of insulin, then subsequent hypertriglyceridemia. So have a note of it. And the last one, fasting hypoglycemia. Now let's look at the treatment. So oral glucose or cornstarch can be given to avoid lack in ability to make free glucose. Patients should avoid fructose and galactose, as they will be first converted to glucose 6 phosphate before being utilized. And we know that due to lack of glucose 6 phosphatase, this compound can't be degraded further. So please keep in mind that patients should avoid fructose and galactose. Then for hyperuricemia, allopurinol can be used. For hyperlipidemia, fenofibrate and orlistat can be used, and antihypertensive drugs are also given in case of von Gierke diseases. So I hope you enjoyed the video. Please like the video, share the video, and if you are new to my channel, please subscribe to it.